My husband's Rolex was the only thing I had left of him. When I couldn't find it, my son Marcus just rolled his eyes and said, "Stop whining, Mom. It is already sold. I needed that money for my trip." He thought he had won. He thought I was just a helpless old widow he could rob blind. But when I called the pawn shop to try to get it back, the owner's voice was shaking. He said, "Ma'am, you need to come down here right now. You need to see what we found inside the watch. My name is Hattie Mae, and this is how a fake watch revealed a $20 million secret that destroyed my ungrateful son and his greedy wife." Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you are watching from and subscribe to the Never Too Old channel. We are creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. It was a Sunday morning, the kind of morning that usually smells like lavender powder and old Bible pages. I was getting ready for the 11 o'clock service, just like I have for 40 years. I stood in front of my vanity mirror, adjusting my favorite church hat. The wide-brimmed one Elijah used to say made me look like a queen. I reached into the back of my velvet-lined jewelry drawer. My fingers felt for the small hidden compartment where I kept it. Elijah's 1978 Rolex Oyster Perpetual. It was the only thing I kept after the funeral 3 years ago. Everything else went to charity or to the bills, but that watch was different. It still smelled like his cologne and pipe tobacco. But when my hand found the box, it felt wrong. Too light. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pulled it out and flipped the lid. Empty. The velvet cushion was there, but the silver and gold band was gone. I did not scream. I did not faint. I have been a hospital administrator for 30 years, and I know how to handle a crisis. I closed the box with a snap that echoed in the silent room. I knew exactly who had been in my room. I could hear them downstairs. The sound of zippers and laughter drifting up from my kitchen. My son Marcus and his wife Tiffany. They had moved in 6 months ago to save money for a house, but all I saw them saving was my patience. I walked down the stairs one slow, deliberate step at a time. In the kitchen, the scene was enough to make my blood boil. 2 giant suitcases sat by the door. Tiffany was sipping a green smoothie, leaning against my granite counter like she owned the deed. Marcus was buttering toast without a care in the world. They were glowing with excitement. "Where is it, Marcus?" I did not raise my voice. I did not have to. When Hattie Mae speaks in that tone, people listen. Marcus froze the knife hovering over his toast. He did not look at me, but Tiffany did. She turned with that tight little smile she saves for me when she thinks she is being clever. "Oh, good morning, Mom. We were just about to come say bye. The Uber is 5 minutes away." I took a step closer, my eyes fixed on my son. "I asked you a question, Marcus. Where is your father's watch?" Marcus looked at his wife like a dog waiting for a command, but Tiffany did not even blink. She took another sip of her smoothie, wiped her mouth with a napkin, and looked me dead in the eye. "He sold it, Hattie. We needed the upgrade. Do you have any idea how long the flight to Bora Bora is? We could not possibly sit in economy for 12 hours. It is bad for my circulation." I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "You sold Elijah's watch. That watch was not yours to sell. It was a family heirloom." Tiffany laughed a dry, humorless sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, please. It was just sitting in a box gathering dust. Besides, Dad is dead. What does he need to tell time for?" The disrespect hung in the air, heavy and toxic. I looked at my son, my own flesh and blood, the boy I raised to say yes, ma'am, and no, sir, hoping to see a flicker of shame, just 1 ounce of regret. But Marcus just shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "Mom, come on, don't be so stingy," he said, stuffing the last piece of toast into his mouth. "You act like we sold the crown jewels. It is just an old scratched-up watch." The guy at the pawn shop barely gave me $2,000 for it. Consider it a late wedding gift, since you know you were so tight with the checkbook for the ceremony. $2,000. My stomach turned. That watch was worth 10 times that in sentiment alone, not to mention the actual value of a vintage Rolex. But to them, it was just a ticket to extra legroom and warm champagne. "We have to go, Marcus." Tiffany checked her phone, tapping her manicured nails against the screen. "The driver is outside. Don't wait up for us, Hattie. We will be gone for 2 weeks. Try not to die of boredom while we are gone." She grabbed her designer bag, the one I knew cost more than my monthly pension check, and marched out the door without looking back. Marcus mumbled a quick "bye, Mom," and followed her, dragging the suitcases that scraped against my hardwood floors. The front door slammed shut, and the silence rushed back in, filling the space they left behind. I stood there in the middle of my kitchen, my hands gripping the edge of the counter, until my knuckles turned white. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I looked over at the wall calendar hanging by the fridge. The date stared back at me. June 14th. Today was the 3rd anniversary of Elijah's death. They did not even remember. They sold his memory for a vacation on the very day we buried him. I did not cry. Tears are for people who still have hope that things might change. I had something else now. I had clarity. And as I looked at that date on the calendar, I knew one thing for certain. My son and his wife had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The phone rang at 8 in the morning, sharp cutting through the silence of my empty house like a fire alarm. I picked it up, expecting a bill collector or maybe a telemarketer, but instead I heard a voice I had not heard in years. "Hattie, is that you?" It was Benny, the owner of Benny S. Pawn and Loan downtown. He and Elijah had served together in Vietnam. They were brothers in everything but blood. "Benny, listen. I know my son came by yesterday," I started to say, feeling the shame heat up my neck. "Hattie, you need to get down here, now. Do not even finish your coffee, just get in the car." His voice was shaking. Benny never shook. He was a man who had seen war, who had stared down barrel of a gun without blinking. If he was shaking, something was wrong. I grabbed my purse and drove to the shop, my hands tight on the steering wheel. The shop smelled like old dust and desperate promises, just like it always did. Benny was waiting for me at the back counter, the security gate pulled down. The watch sat on a velvet tray between us. It looked exactly the same as it always had, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "I tried to stop him," Hattie, Benny said, rubbing his bald head with a nervous hand. "I told the boy this was Elijah S. watch. I told him he should talk to you first. But he just laughed, said he needed cash for some island trip. I gave him $2,000 just to get him out of here so I could call you." I reached out to touch the cold metal. "Thank you, Benny. I will pay you back every cent." "No, Hattie, you do not understand." Benny put on his jeweler-esque loop and picked up a small screwdriver. "You need to see this. Watch closely." I watched as his steady hands worked the case back open. I expected to see the intricate dance of gears and springs, the heartbeat of a masterpiece that Elijah had wound every morning for 40 years. Instead, what lay inside looked wrong, cheap, plastic. Benny looked up at me, his eyes serious. "The case is genuine Rolex, Hattie, solid gold 1978, but the movement, the insides, it is a cheap Chinese knockoff. $5 worth of tin and plastic. Elijah swapped the guts out 10 years ago." I frowned. Why would he do that? Elijah loved quality. He would never wear a fake. Benny did not answer. Instead, he picked up a pair of fine-tipped tweezers. He poked gently at the plastic mechanism, moving aside a small battery casing. There, tucked into a space no bigger than a fingernail hidden beneath the fake gears, was something that definitely did not belong in a watch. A tiny black micro SD card. Benny pulled it out and held it up to the light. It was so small, a speck of dust could hide it. "Your son thought he was selling an old broken watch for scrap," Benny said, his voice low and full of awe. "He thought he was pulling a fast one." But Elijah was always 3 steps ahead. Marcus sold a treasure chest for pennies, Hattie, and he did not even know he was holding the key. I stared at that tiny black chip. My husband, the brilliant human rights lawyer, the man who fought for the voiceless, had turned his favorite possession into a vault, and my foolish, greedy son had pawned it for a plane ticket. Whatever was on that card, Elijah wanted me to see it, and he knew exactly who would try to take it. Benny's hands were trembling as he inserted the tiny memory card into an old card reader connected to his dust-covered computer tower. The machine whirred and groaned like it was waking up from a long nap. I held my breath, my purse clutched tight against my chest. The screen flickered to life, and a video file popped up. The date stamp was from 3 weeks before Elijah passed. Benny clicked play, and suddenly the air left the room. There he was, My Elijah. He was sitting in his favorite leather armchair wearing his Sunday best, the gray suit with the blue tie I bought him for Easter. He looked tired, his eyes a little sunken, but his voice was steady and strong, just like I remembered. "Hello, Hattie, my love," Elijah said through the crackling computer speakers. "If you are watching this, it means I am gone, and the vultures have finally started circling. I am sorry I could not tell you this while I was here, but I needed to keep you safe. I needed you to have plausible deniability until the trap was sprung." I pressed my hand to my mouth to stifle a sob. It felt like a ghost was speaking directly to my soul. "You need to listen to me very carefully," Hattie Elijah continued, leaning into the camera. "This is not about the watch. It was never about the watch. It is about the family. Tiffany's family. You think it was a coincidence she bumped into Marcus at the charity gala? You think it is luck that her father Richard just happens to be the biggest real estate developer in the county?" My blood ran cold. Richard. I had only met him twice at the wedding and at the funeral. A cold man with a smile that never reached his eyes. "He did not send his daughter to find a husband," Hattie Elijah said, his voice hardening. "He sent her to find a key. They are looking for the deed to Lot 42. Lot 42? I frowned, trying to remember. It was just a scrap of marshland Elijah had bought back in the 80s for pennies. He used to joke he bought it just to keep the mosquitoes happy. "Richard knows what is coming," Elijah said. "The city council is about to rezone that entire district for a new tech corridor. That swampland, Hattie, it is not just mud anymore. It is the cornerstone of a billion-dollar development. That land is worth $20 million right now. And Richard will do anything to get his hands on it. He married his daughter off to our son just to get close to that deed. $20 million. The room spun. My son and his wife sold a watch for $2,000 to go to an island while sitting on a fortune they knew nothing about, or at least Marcus knew nothing about. But Tiffany knew everything. "They think the deed is in the safe deposit box," Elijah said. "That is why Tiffany is always prowling around the house." "But I moved it, Hattie. I moved the real documents and the proof of Richard's bribery schemes to the only place they would never look." On the screen, Elijah smiled that mischievous smile that used to make my knees weak. "The code to the real floor safe is taped to the back of the Last Supper painting in the living room," he whispered. "The one your mother gave us. Get the papers, Hattie, and do not trust anyone, not Marcus. He is too weak, and she has him wrapped around her finger. There is only one person you can trust. Call Jamal, call our grandson, and tell him it is time to come home." Then the screen went black. I sat in my car outside Benny S.'s shop for a long time, just staring at the dashboard. Then I dialed. Jamal answered on the second ring. "Grandma, everything good." He sounded studying, tired but alert. I did not waste time. "I need you home, Jamal. Now. I did not offer to pay for gas. I did not promise him a reward. I just asked. And that boy did not hesitate. 'I am leaving now,' he said. 'I will be there by midnight.'" He drove 6 hours straight from his campus in Atlanta. When his beat-up Honda rolled into the driveway, the moon was high and the house was dark. Marcus and Tiffany were probably halfway to Bora Bora by now, clinking glasses and laughing about the old woman they left behind. They had no idea reinforcements had just arrived. Jamal hugged me on the porch and he held on tight. He is tall now, lanky, but strong like a young tree. He smelled like highway coffee and rain. He did not ask what was in it for him. He just looked at me with eyes that hold too much wisdom for 19 and said, "What is the mission, Grandma?" I led him to the formal living room. The air was stale in there, unused. We stopped in front of the fireplace. Above the mantel hung The Last Supper, a massive print in a heavy gold frame my mother had given Elijah and me as a wedding gift 50 years ago. It had watched over every Christmas morning, every family argument, every secret whispered in this room. "Take it down, baby," I said. Jamal did not ask why. He just stepped up, lifted the heavy frame like it was cardboard, and laid it face down on the Persian rug. My heart was hammering against my ribs as I knelt beside him. The paper backing was yellowed with age, brittle to the touch. I ran my hand along the bottom edge, feeling for what Elijah promised. There it was, a small hard lump near the corner hidden beneath a strip of brown packing tape that looked like it had been there for decades. I peeled the tape back slowly. My breath hitched. Taped to the cardboard was a small silver key, the kind that opens a safety deposit box, and a strip of paper with a sequence of numbers written in black ink. 421985. I touched the numbers. Elijah S. handwriting, jagged and rushed. Jamal looked at the key, then at me. "Is this it? This is the beginning," I whispered. I looked at my grandson, kneeling on the floor in his college hoodie, focused and ready. Then I thought about my son, Marcus. Marcus, who needed first-class tickets to feel important. Marcus, who looked at his father's watch and saw a paycheck. They say blood is thicker than water, but I realized right then that loyalty is thicker than both. Marcus shared my DNA, but Jamal shared my heart. "We have work to do," I said, pocketing the key, and for the first time in 3 years, I did not feel like a widow. I felt like a general. We set up a command center right there on my dining room table. Jamal pulled out his laptop, a sleek silver machine that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. He cracked his knuckles and looked at me with serious eyes. "Grandma, if we are going to find out what they are planning, I need to get into Uncle Marcus's cloud account. Do you have any idea what his password might be?" I did not even have to think about it. My son has never been a complicated man. He wears his heart on his sleeve and his vulnerabilities out in the open. "Try April 25th, 1990, I said. "Tiffany S. Birthday." Jamal typed the numbers in and hit enter. The screen flashed green immediately. We were in. I felt a sharp pang of secondhand embarrassment. My son, the man who sold his father's legacy for a vacation, was so predictable he used his wife's birthday to protect his darkest secrets. It was pathetic, really. Jamal started scrolling through emails and text logs, his eyes scanning the screen faster than I could read. Most of it was nonsense receipts for expensive dinners, confirmation emails for the Bora Bora trip, credit card alerts for things they could not afford. But then his scrolling stopped abruptly. "Grandma, look at this." He pointed to a thread of text messages. The contact name was just Dad, but the number belonged to Richard Tiffany S. father. I leaned in, adjusting my glasses to read the small print. The messages went back months, a digital paper trail of conspiracy. I read the most recent one out loud, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and vindication. Richard wrote, "Listen to me, Tiff. I am leveraged up to my eyeballs on this downtown expansion. If we do not get control of Lot 42 before the City Council vote next month, the bank calls the loans. We lose everything. Do you understand? We lose the house, the cars, the firm. Everything rides on that land." So that was it. The great Richard, the wealthy real estate mogul who looked down his nose at us at the wedding, was broke. He was drowning in debt, and he needed my husband S. land to save himself. But it was Tiffany S.'s reply that shattered whatever tiny hope I had left for my son S. marriage. It was time-stamped just 2 days ago, right before they left for the airport. She wrote, "Relax, Daddy, I am working on it. The old woman is clueless. She thinks the watch was the only valuable thing left." And Marcus, God help him, he is an idiot. He has no idea his daddy was sitting on a gold mine. He thinks we are just lucky. I will have power of attorney by the time we get back. Just have the papers ready to sign. I stared at the glowing screen. An idiot. That is what she called the man who worshipped the ground she walked on. My son was not just a pawn in their game, he was the punchline. Richard and Tiffany were not just greedy, they were desperate predators. They planned to take the land, sell it to cover their bad business deals, and throw me in a home to keep me quiet. I looked at Jamal. His jaw was set tight, his eyes reflecting the blue light of the screen. "They think we are stupid, Grandma," he said quietly. "They think we are just going to roll over and let them take it." I put a hand on his shoulder, feeling the strength in his young frame. "They are about to find out just how wrong they are," I said. "Print it all, Jamal. Print every single word." Jamal clicked on a folder labeled Medical Inquiries, and his face went ash gray. He did not want to show me. He tried to close the window, but I reached over and stopped his hand. "Open it, Jamal," I said. "I need to see the depth of the rot." He opened the email. It was a correspondence between Tiffany and the admissions director of a facility called Shady Pines Manor. I knew the place. Everyone in our community knew Shady Pines. It was where you sent people you wanted to forget. It was a warehouse for the dying, a place that smelled of stale urine and industrial cleaner, where the staff was underpaid and the residents were over-medicated. It was the last stop before the grave. The subject line read, "Urgent placement for Hattie Mae." I read Tiffany's words, and they felt like physical blows. "My mother-in-law is suffering from rapid cognitive decline," she wrote. "She has become aggressive and confused. We fear for her safety and ours. We need a secure unit. Budget is a concern, so we are looking for your basic package. Aggressive, confused. I balance my checkbook to the penny every Sunday night. I run the hospital auxiliary board. I memorize scripture that would make a preacher stumble. But in their narrative, I was just a drooling liability that needed to be stored away so they could cash out." Then I saw the attachment. It was a draft of a medical competency evaluation already filled out. It declared me unfit to manage my own affairs. It was signed by a Dr. Vance. I recognized the name immediately. He was one of Richard S. golf buddies, a man who had lost his license once for writing prescriptions for cash and got it back through high-priced lawyers. He had never examined me. He had never even met me. But for the right price, he was willing to sign away my freedom. They had a timeline, too. The email stated they planned to have me admitted the day after they returned from Bora Bora. They were going to ambush me. Marcus, my own son, was going to let men in white coats drag me out of the home his father built so he could sell it for $20 million. I looked at the photo of Marcus on the mantel. I remembered rocking him when he had colic, walking the floor all night until my feet bled. I remembered paying his tuition when he failed his first semester. I remembered thinking I would die for that boy. But looking at that email, something inside me died. The mother in me, the woman who made excuses, who forgave, who loved unconditionally, she withered away in that chair. And in her place, something cold and hard woke up. I realized then that I was not his mother anymore. Not to him. To him, I was just an obstacle. I was a line item in a spreadsheet that needed to be deleted. I was prey, but they forgot one thing. Prey runs, predators fight, and I was done running. I stood up and walked to the window, my reflection staring back at me against the night. I did not look like a confused old woman. I looked like a general surveying the battlefield. "Jamal," I said, my voice dropping an octave, "save it. Save every single letter. And print out that competency form. If they want to prove I am crazy, I am going to give them a show they will never forget." Jamal looked at me, his eyes wide. "Grandma, you look scary." "Good," I said. "I should be, because I am done crying over spilt milk. It is time to break the glass." The next morning, I did not go to the police station. I went to the one place Richard's money could not touch. Thaddeus Washington's law office on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Thaddeus had marched with Elijah in the 60s. He had bailed protesters out of jail at 3 a.m. when no one else would pick up the phone. He was 80 years old and sharp as a razor blade. When Jamal and I walked into his office breathing in the smell of old leather and books, Thaddeus stood up and hugged me. He looked at Jamal and nodded, acknowledging the strength in my grandson's eyes. We laid it all out on his mahogany desk, the fake watch, the emails about the land, the plans for Shady Pines. Thaddeus did not look shocked. He looked angry, a quiet, simmering anger that I recognized from the old days. He stood up and walked to a massive iron safe in the corner of the room. He spun the dial, his movements precise and practiced. He pulled out a thick file sealed with red wax. "Elijah entrusted this to me 5 years ago," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. "The deed to Lot 42 is in a blind trust, Hattie. It is sitting in the main vault at First National Bank. Richard cannot touch it, not unless you sign it over voluntarily." He looked at me over his spectacles, his eyes serious. "Or unless you are declared incompetent and your power of attorney signs it for you. That is their play, Hattie. They need you to be crazy so they can legally rob you." Thaddeus reached for his phone. "We should go to the district attorney right now. This is conspiracy. This is elder abuse. We can have them arrested the moment their plane lands." I put my hand on his arm, stopping him. "No, Thaddeus, not yet." He frowned. "Hattie, they are dangerous. If we go to the police now, Richard will lawyer up. He will blame everything on Tiffany. Marcus will play the victim, claiming he did not know anything. They might get a slap on the wrist, but they will not be destroyed, and Richard will just find another way to come after the land. I stood up, smoothing down my skirt. I did not want a battle. I wanted a massacre. I wanted to expose them, all of them, in front of the very people they tried to impress. They think I am a confused, helpless old woman, I said, feeling a cold smile spread across my face. They think my mind is going. They think I am easy prey. So I am going to let them believe it. I am going to give them exactly what they want. Jamal looked at me, a grin forming on his face. You are going to act the part. I am going to give the performance of a lifetime, I confirmed. I turned back to Thaddeus. I need you to draft some papers, Thaddeus. Make them look exactly like the ones they want me to sign. But I want you to add a few special clauses, and I need you to be ready. When I give the signal, I want the police, the press, and the district attorney at my front door. Thaddeus leaned back in his chair and actually laughed. It was a dry, rusty sound. God help them, Hattie, he said, shaking his head. They woke up the wrong woman. I walked out of that office into the bright sunlight. I was not afraid anymore. I knew exactly what I had to do. I was going to set the table, invite the wolves in for dinner, and then I was going to lock the door. They came back on a Tuesday, 3 days earlier than planned. I suspect Richard pulled the plug on their credit cards, or maybe Tiffany just couldn't wait to get her hands on my house. I was sitting in the sunroom reading a book on contract law disguised inside a Bible cover when I heard the front door open. I didn't jump up. I didn't rush to greet them. Instead, I let my shoulders slump forward. I relaxed the muscles in my face until my jaw went a little slack. I took off my reading glasses and let my hands develop a subtle, rhythmic tremor. By the time they walked into the room, Hattie the general was gone, and Hattie the senile widow had taken her place. Marcus looked tan, but tired, his eyes shifting around the room like he expected the furniture to jump out at him. Tiffany looked sharp hungry, and behind them stood a man I had never seen before. He was tall, with slicked back hair and a suit that cost more than my car. He carried a leather medical bag that looked like a prop from a bad movie. "Mom, we're home," Marcus said, his voice loud and slow like he was talking to a toddler. I looked up, blinking rapidly. "Elijah, is that you, baby? You're home early from the firm. Did you win the case?" Marcus flinched. "No, Mom. It's Marcus. Your son, remember?" I frowned, letting confusion cloud my eyes. "Marcus. Oh. Marcus. My baby boy." I stood up, making sure to wobble just enough to make Tiffany smirk. I reached out to touch his face, my hand shaking violently. "You look so much like your father today. Where have you been? I was waiting for you to fix the clock. The clock has been stopped for days. There was no broken clock. I had simply unplugged the one in the hallway an hour ago." Tiffany stepped forward, her smile tight and predatory. "We were on vacation, Hattie. Don't you remember we went to the island? But look, we brought a friend to see you. This is Dr. Thorne. He's a specialist. He just wants to chat with you for a bit, see how you're doing." The man stepped forward, extending a hand that felt cold and damp. "Mrs. May, it's a pleasure. Your son has told me so much about you. I just want to ask you a few simple questions." I stared at him blankly, then looked past him to the window. "It's going to rain," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Elijah always said the rain brings the worms out." Dr. Thorne exchanged a look with Tiffany, a look that said, "This is going to be easier than we thought." He didn't open his medical bag. He didn't check my vitals. He just pulled out a pen and a clipboard. "So, Hattie, can you tell me what year it is?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. I looked at Marcus. He was studying the floor, unable to meet my gaze. He knew what this was. This wasn't a checkup. It was an ambush. I think it's time for supper," I said, clutching my shawl tighter around my shoulders. "Did you make the roast, Elijah?" "You know I love the roast." Tiffany let out a short, sharp breath of relief. She patted my arm, her nails digging in slightly. "Sure, Mom. We'll get you some roast. Why don't you just sit down and relax with the doctor?" I sat. I let them talk over me. I let them treat me like a piece of furniture that had outlived its usefulness. Inside my mind was razor-sharp recording every word, every glance, every betrayal. They thought they were watching a woman lose her mind. What they were actually watching was a masterclass in deception, and they were buying every single second of it. Dinner that night was pot roast, or at least that is what Marcus called it. It tasted like guilt and store-bought gravy. I sat at the head of the table staring at my plate, letting my fork clatter against the china every few seconds just to keep them on edge. Marcus kept glancing at his phone, and Tiffany was practically vibrating in her chair. I knew the main event was coming. I just had to wait for the bell. Tiffany cleared her throat. It was a sound like a zipper getting stuck. She reached under the table and pulled out a thick document. It was clipped together with a blue plastic cover that screamed official business. "Mom," she said, her voice dripping with that fake syrup sweetness she uses when she wants money. "Marcus and I were talking. This house is just too big for you to manage alone. Look at all this dust." She slid the papers toward me, moving my water glass aside. "We found this wonderful service. They come in and do everything. Deep cleaning, laundry, even grocery shopping. You just need to sign this service agreement so we can set up the payments from your account. It is just standard paperwork, sugar, just to help you out." I looked down at the document. My reading glasses were in my pocket, but I did not need them to recognize a power of attorney document when I saw one. Even upside down, I saw the words durable and asset management in bold print near the bottom. They were not hiring a maid. They were hiring an executioner for my financial freedom. They wanted to sign my life away between the salad and the main course. "Oh, that sounds nice," I said, my voice cracking perfectly. "A cleaning lady. Elijah always said I needed help. Did he say that? My memory is so fuzzy these days." I reached for the heavy fountain pen Tiffany was holding out. I let my hand tremble violently. My fingers fumbled with the barrel of the pen, unable to get a grip. Tiffany watched me like a hawk watching a mouse. "Just sign right there, Hattie," she urged, tapping the signature line with a manicured fingernail. "Just a little scratch, and we can take care of everything for you." I lowered the pen to the paper. I squeezed my eyes shut like I was in pain. Then I jerked my hand. The pen tip dug into the paper, tearing through the signature line. I gasped and flailed my arm, knocking over my glass of iced tea. The cold liquid flooded across the table, soaking the document, turning the ink into a blurry, illegible mess. "Oh, Lord, look what I did!" I wailed, dropping the pen into the puddle. "I am so clumsy. My hands, they just do not listen to me anymore. I am making a mess of everything. Elijah would be so ashamed." Tiffany snatched the sodden papers off the table water, dripping onto her expensive silk blouse. Her face turned a shade of purple I had only seen on bruised plums. She looked ready to scream, but she swallowed it down. Marcus jumped up, grabbing napkins, dabbing at the mess. "It is okay, Mom. It is just water. Don't cry." I rubbed my temples, letting out a long, shaky breath. "I am so tired, Marcus. My eyes are all blurry. The room is spinning around. I cannot see the lines. Can we do this later? Maybe tomorrow, after I rest my eyes." Tiffany took a deep breath, forcing her face back into a smile that looked more like a rictus of pain. "Of course, Mom. We can print another copy. Tomorrow will be fine. Go rest. You need your strength." I let Marcus help me up the stairs, leaning heavily on him like a sack of potatoes. As we reached the landing, I looked back. Tiffany was standing in the kitchen, wringing out the wet document, her eyes burning with hatred. She thought she had lost a battle due to an old woman's clumsiness. She did not know I had just bought myself the time I needed to bury her. That night, the house was quiet as a tomb, but it was far from empty. I went to bed early, making a big show of yawning and complaining about my aching joints for Marcus' benefit. I closed my door, but I did not sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house breathe, waiting for my soldier to make his move. A few minutes later, my door creaked open just a fraction. It was Jamal. He moved like a shadow, silent and efficient in his socks. He did not say a word. He just went to work. He replaced the faceplate on the electrical outlet near my vanity with a spy camera he had bought from some dark corner of the internet. Then he climbed onto a chair and messed with the crystal chandelier above my bed, hiding a second lens among the glass teardrops. He was quick professional. My grandson was turning my sanctuary into a surveillance state, and Lord help me, I was proud of him. He gave me a thumbs up in the dark and slipped out, leaving me alone on the stage. Now the trap was set. I waited. I adjusted my breathing to a slow, rhythmic snore, a trick I learned from Elijah when he wanted to get out of long phone calls. It was not long before the door handle turned again. This time the intruder was not careful. Tiffany slipped inside. She was wearing a silk robe that cost more than my first car, but she moved like a common thief. I watched her through the slit of my eyelids. She did not check on me. She did not tuck me in. She went straight for my dresser. She pulled open drawers with rough, impatient hands. She dug through my Sunday hats, my prayer journals, even the box where I keep my knitting needles. She was frantic. She tossed my things onto the floor like they were trash. The disrespect made my blood boil, but I kept my breathing steady, in and out, in and out. Then she came to the bedside table. She opened the drawer right next to my head. I could smell her perfume, something heavy and floral that tried too hard to smell expensive. She found nothing but my Bible and some cough drops. She slammed the drawer shut, causing the water glass to rattle. "Damn it!" she hissed, her voice, a venomous whisper in the dark. Where did this old hag hide the deed? She turned and looked at me. I felt her gaze on my face, cold and hateful. "Why don't you just die already?" she muttered, leaning over me. "Do you have any idea how much easier my life would be if you just stopped breathing? We need that land, you stubborn old mule. Just die and get out of the way." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird, but I did not flinch. I let out a soft, whistling snore and rolled over, turning my back to her. She huffed in frustration and stomped out of the room, leaving the door ajar. I lay there in the darkness, staring at the wall. She wanted me dead. She was not just greedy, she was evil. But she made a fatal mistake. She thought she was whispering to a sleeping woman. She did not know she was auditioning for the role of a lifetime, and the camera in the outlet had captured every single word of her performance. The sun came up too bright the next morning, a harsh yellow light that exposed the dust motes dancing in the air. I shuffled into the kitchen wearing my oldest housecoat, the one with the coffee stain on the hem that I usually saved for cleaning days. I made sure my hair was a little unkempt, a few gray strands escaping my bonnet. I needed to look like a woman who had given up. Marcus and Tiffany were already at the table whispering over coffee. When I walked in, they snapped apart like guilty teenagers. Tiffany smoothed her hair, her eyes scanning me for weakness. "Good morning, Mom," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Sleep okay?" I didn't answer right away. I walked to the sink and stared out at the garden, letting my shoulders sag under the weight of the world. "No," I said softly. "I didn't sleep at all. The house, it makes noises. It's too big. Elijah used to handle the noises." I turned around and looked at them. I let my lower lip tremble just a bit. "You were right, Tiffany, about everything. I'm tired. My mind isn't right. Last night I thought I saw Elijah standing in the hallway. I thought he was telling me to sell the land." Tiffany's eyes went wide. She set her coffee cup down, leaning forward like a shark smelling blood in the water. "Really, Mom? You think it's time?" I nodded slowly, wiping a tear from my cheek. "I can't manage it anymore. The bills, the maintenance, the decisions, it's all too much. I just want to rest. I want to go somewhere where I don't have to worry." Marcus looked down at his plate, guilt flashing across his face for a second before he shoved it down. "We just want what's best for you, Mom." "I know, son," I said, walking over and patting his hand. "I know. That's why I've made a decision. I want to sign everything over to you. The house, the accounts, the land Elijah bought, all of it." Tiffany practically vibrated in her chair. She kicked Marcus under the table. "That's a very sensible decision, Hattie. We can have the lawyer bring the papers over this afternoon." "No," I said, holding up a shaking hand. "Not today. I want to do this right. Elijah always said important business should be done over a meal. I want you to invite your parents, Tiffany. Invite Richard and your mother. Let's have a formal dinner this Friday. We can sign everything then with everyone as witnesses. I want to pass the torch properly." "Friday?" Tiffany asked, her voice sharp. "Why wait?" "Because I need to say goodbye to the house," I whispered. "Just give me a few days, please." She looked at me, calculating. She figured 3 days wouldn't change anything. She figured the old woman was beaten. "Okay, Mom," she said, smiling that shark smile. "Friday it is. I'll call Daddy." I shuffled out of the room, muttering about needing a nap. But I didn't go to my room. I stopped just around the corner in the hallway and listened. I heard Tiffany dial her phone. Her voice changed instantly, becoming crisp and triumphant. "Daddy, it's done. The fish has taken the bait. She's cracking. She wants to sign everything over on Friday at a dinner. Yes, everything. The land, too. Bring the notary. Bring the champagne. We're going to be rich." I stood in the hallway, my back straight, my eyes dry. "Rich," she said. She had no idea. She was right about one thing, though. We were going to have a dinner on Friday, but the only thing being served was going to be just as cold and hard. The morning of the bank visit, the sky was gray and heavy with rain, but my spirit felt lighter than it had in years. Jamal drove us to the downtown branch of First National. I sat in the passenger seat clutching the small silver key from behind the painting like it was a lifeline. When the bank manager led us into the vault, the air was cool and smelled of old paper and quiet money. Box 447. I slid the key into the lock and turned it. The click echoed off the steel walls. Jamal pulled the long metal drawer out and set it on the viewing table. His hands were steady, but I could see a vein pulsing in his neck. We were not just opening a box, we were opening a time capsule from a man who saw the future. Inside lay a thick leather portfolio. I opened it with trembling fingers. On top sat the deed. Lot 42. The paper was yellowed at the edges, but the seal was crisp and clear. My Elijah had bought it fair and square 30 years ago. Below the deed was a thick black binder labeled Richard, 1994 to present. I opened the binder and gasped. It was all there. Every bribe, every illegal zoning change, every backroom deal Richard had made to build his empire. Elijah had been tracking him for decades, waiting for the right moment to strike. He did not just leave me a fortune, he left me a weapon. Jamal leafed through the pages, his eyes wide. "Grandma," he whispered, "this brings down everything. Not just the land deal. It brings down Richard's entire company. It brings down the city council members he paid off. Grandpa Elijah was building a bomb. And now we are going to light the fuse," I said, closing the binder. We left the bank and drove straight to the precinct. Chief Miller was waiting for us. He and Elijah had played chess in the park every Saturday for 20 years. When I walked into his office and laid the black binder on his desk, he did not ask questions. He just put on his reading glasses and started turning pages. 10 minutes later, he looked up, his face grim, but his eyes dancing with a fierce light. "Hattie," he said, his voice low, "this is dynamite. If we move on, this Richard goes away for a long time. Racketeering, fraud, bribery. Elijah really did his homework." I leaned forward. "I do not just want him arrested, Chief. I want him exposed. They are coming to my house on Friday night to steal my life. I want you there." Miller nodded slowly, a smile spreading across his face. "We will have a team outside. You give the signal, Hattie, and we kick the door down." Leaving the station, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The pieces were all in place. The trap was set, the camera was recording, the evidence was secure, and the police were waiting. I went home and started cooking. If I was going to host the Last Supper for my son and his in-laws, it was going to be a meal they would remember for the rest of their lives while they sat in a jail cell. I seasoned the greens, I prepped the ham, and I polished the silver. Everything had to be perfect. Friday was coming, and Judgment Day was coming with it. Friday night arrived with a thunderstorm brewing on the horizon, heavy clouds swallowing the last of the sunset. It was fitting. Inside the house was ablaze with light. I had set the dining room table with my finest china, the gold-rimmed set Elijah bought me for our 25th anniversary. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, the same chandelier that now hid a tiny camera lens among its prisms. At 7 o'clock sharp, a sleek black town car pulled into the driveway. Richard and his wife Barbara stepped out. They looked like royalty visiting the peasants. Richard wore a suit that probably cost more than my roof, and Barbara was dripping in diamonds that caught the porch light. They walked up the steps without knocking, pushing the door open as if they already owned the place. "Hattie," Richard boomed, his voice filling the foyer. "So good to see you, though I must say this neighborhood hasn't improved much, has it? Barbara was terrified someone would steal the hubcaps." I stood at the head of the dining table wearing my best Sunday dress. a deep royal blue silk that made me feel 10 feet tall. I had put on my pearl necklace and swept my gray hair into an elegant updo. I didn't look like a confused old woman tonight. I looked like the matriarch of this house. "Welcome, Richard?" "Barbara," I said, my voice steady and cool. "Please sit. Dinner is served." They breezed past me, their eyes scanning the room not with appreciation, but with calculation. I could see Richard mentally tearing down walls, calculating square footage, imagining the bulldozer leveling everything Elijah and I had built. Tiffany and Marcus were already seated. Tiffany looked triumphant, practically glowing with greed. Marcus looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just kept fidgeting with his napkin, a sheen of sweat on his forehead. "Where's the help?" Barbara asked, sniffing the air. "I thought you hired a service." "My grandson is assisting tonight," I said, gesturing to the kitchen door. Jamal stepped out wearing a crisp white shirt and black slacks. He carried a silver tray of appetizers with the grace of a professional, but his eyes were hard as flint. He moved around the table, placing dishes down silently. "Oh, the college boy," Richard sneered, taking a crab cake without saying thank you. "Still studying computers or whatever. You should learn a trade, son. Real estate. That's where the money is." Jamal didn't flinch. He just poured Richard's wine, filling the glass a little too full, forcing Richard to sip it awkwardly to avoid spilling. "So, Hattie," Richard said, wiping his mouth, "let's not stand on ceremony. We have the papers right here. Marcus tells me you're ready to make the right decision. Smart move. A woman your age shouldn't be burdened with property management. Shady Pines is lovely this time of year." "Eat first, Richard," I said, picking up my fork. "We have plenty to discuss, and I want everyone to have a full stomach. It's a long drive to the county jail." "Excuse me," Barbara asked her fork, pausing halfway to her mouth. "I said it's a long drive to the county line," I corrected smoothly, smiling my senile smile. "My hearing isn't what it used to be." They exchanged glances, that smug, knowing look that said she's losing it. They went back to eating, cutting into the ham I had glazed with honey and cloves. They chewed and swallowed, drinking the expensive wine Marcus had bought with my money. They had no idea they were eating their last meal as free citizens. The appetizers were barely cleared when Richard lost his patience. He did not wait for the main course. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick stack of legal documents, and slammed them onto the mahogany table. The sound made the crystal glasses jump and silenced the room instantly. "All right, enough of this charade," Richard barked. The charm was gone, replaced by the cold, hard look of a man who was used to taking what he wanted. "We do not have all night to watch you pick at your food, Hattie." The van from Shady Pines is parked down the street. They are on a schedule, and they charge by the hour. I looked up slowly, letting my fork rest on the plate. "A van?" I asked, my voice trembling just enough to sell it. "But I thought I was staying here. Marcus said I could stay in the guest room. I thought we were family." Marcus stared at his lap, his face pale and sweaty. He looked like he was about to be sick. He gripped his napkin so tight his knuckles were white. "Marcus does not make the decisions anymore," Richard sneered. He pushed the papers toward me right next to the gravy boat. "You are confused, Hattie. You are sick. We are doing this for your own good. Now pick up the pen and sign the transfer. You are signing the house and that swampland over to Marcus. We will handle the rest." I looked at the papers. The top page was a quitclaim deed. Underneath that, a full power of attorney, and below that the admission forms for the state facility. They were not even trying to hide it anymore. "But the land," I whispered, clutching my napkin. "Elijah said never to sell the land. He said it was for the family. He said it was for the future." Tiffany let out a loud, exasperated sigh. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "Oh my God, nobody cares what Elijah said," she snapped. She leaned over the table, her face twisted and ugly with impatience. "He is dead, you old hag, and you are going to be rotting in a home by midnight if you do not sign that paper right now. Stop stalling. Sign fast, old woman. Do not waste my time." Barbara, Richard's wife, took a sip of wine and looked at her nails as if this was all just a tedious bore. "Really? Hattie, do not make this difficult. It is embarrassing." I looked at Marcus one last time. "Son," I asked softly, "is this what you want? You want them to take me away. You want to throw me out of your father's house." Marcus looked up, his eyes wet. He opened his mouth, but Richard slammed his hand on the table again. "Shut up, boy," Richard commanded. He turned his glare back to me. "He does what he is told. And so will you. Sign the damn papers, Hattie, or so help me. God, I will have you declared incompetent by morning, and you will not even get to pack a bag." The room was silent, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. The air was thick with greed and malice. They were vultures picking at the bones of my life before I was even dead. I reached out and took the heavy gold pen Richard offered. It felt cold in my hand. I looked at the signature line. Then I looked at Tiffany, who was practically drooling with anticipation. I looked at Richard, smug and victorious. "You know," I said, my voice suddenly losing its tremor. I sat up straighter, pushing my shoulders back. Elijah always told me never to sign anything without reading the fine print, and he also told me never to do business with snakes. Richard frowned, confusion clouding his face. "What did you say?" I said, I continued, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "I am not signing anything, but I do have something for you." I reached into the pocket of my dress. It was time. The acting was over. The matriarch was back. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the untouched water glasses. I kept my hand in my pocket. My fingers curled around the cold metal band. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him one last time. I wanted to see if there was any of his father left in there, any of me. But all I saw was a scared little boy in a grown man's suit, terrified of his wife and her father. "Before I sign anything," I said, my voice smooth and steady like a calm sea before a hurricane, "I want to give something back to Marcus. Something he lost. Or rather, something he threw away." I pulled my hand out and laid it on the table. The Rolex Oyster Perpetual gleamed under the chandelier light. The gold and silver band caught the reflection of Richard's greedy eyes. It sat there heavy and undeniable. The sound of Tiffany's fork hitting her plate was like a gunshot. Her face went from flushed to sheet white in a heartbeat. She stared at the watch like it was a venomous snake coiled next to the butter dish. She grabbed Marcus's arm, her nails digging into his jacket sleeve. Marcus made a noise in his throat, a strangled little whimper. He looked from the watch to me, then to Tiffany, his eyes wide with panic. He knew he had sold it. He knew it was gone. And yet there it was, sitting on his mother's dining table. How Richard scoffed, breaking the silence. He picked up his wineglass, swirling the red liquid with a bored expression. "What is this, Hattie? You are stalling with a piece of pawnshop jewelry. What is that old thing worth anyway? A couple $1,000s. We are talking about millions here, and you are playing show and tell with trinkets." He laughed, a short barking sound that grated on my nerves. "Just sign the papers and you can keep your little trinket in the nursing home." "It is trash, Hattie, just like this neighborhood." I picked up the watch, letting the weight of it settle in my palm. I ran my thumb over the crystal face, thinking of all the times I had watched Elijah wind it, all the times he checked it before coming home to me. "To you it is trash," I said, my voice dropping lower, turning hard as granite. To my son, it was a plane ticket. To his wife, it was an inconvenience. I looked Richard dead in the eye. But to my husband, this was not just a watch. It was a mousetrap. And you, Richard, are the rat he caught from the grave. Tiffany stood up so fast, her chair tipped over backward, crashing onto the floor. She knew. In that moment, she knew the game was over. She looked at the watch, then at the chandelier, then at the outlet in the wall. Her eyes darted around the room, realizing for the first time that she was not the hunter. "What are you talking about?" Marcus stammered, his voice shaking. "Mom, you are confusing me." "I am not the one who is confused, Marcus," I said. "I did not buy this back from Benny because I needed to tell time. I bought it back because of what your father hid inside it." Jamal stepped forward from the corner, a remote control in his hand. He pointed it at the flat-screen television mounted above the fireplace. "Turn it on, baby," I said. "Let's show our guests the feature presentation." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "Enough of this. I am calling the orderlies. Sit down, Richard." I commanded, my voice booming with the authority of a woman who had run a hospital and a household for 40 years. "You are not calling anyone. But you might want to call a lawyer, because what you are about to see is going to put you away for the rest of your miserable life." Jamal pressed the button. The screen flared to life. The huge television screen flickered to life, and suddenly the dead were speaking. Elijah appeared sitting in his study, just as he had been years ago. He looked straight into the camera, his eyes boring into Richard. "Hello, Richard," he said, his voice booming through the surround sound speakers. "If you are seeing this, it means you finally made your move on my family. You always were predictable." Richard froze his wine glass halfway to his mouth. On the screen, Elijah held up a document. October 14th, 1994. The Rezoning Commission bribery scandal. You thought you buried it when you paid off Councilman Davis. You thought destroying my reputation would keep me quiet. But I kept the receipts, Richard. Every wire transfer, every recorded call. It is all here. The blood drained from Richard S.'s face so fast he looked like a corpse. Barbara gasped, clutching her pearls for real this time. But the show was not over. The screen blinked and shifted. Now it was grainy black and white night vision. My bedroom. Last night. Tiffany appeared on screen looking like a demon in silk. She was tearing through my drawers, her face twisted in a snarl. Her voice hissed through the speakers loud and clear. "Where is it? Where did this stupid old witch hide the deed? Why won't she just die? If she does not sign tomorrow, I swear I will smother her myself." Marcus made a sound like he had been punched in the gut. He stared at the screen, then at his wife. Tiffany was shaking her mouth, opening and closing like a fish on a dock. She tried to reach for the remote, but Jamal stepped in front of her. Arms crossed a wall of righteous anger. "That is your wife's son," I said softly. "That is the woman you sold your father's watch for." Richard slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware. "This is illegal. You cannot record us. This is entrapment." "It is my house, Richard," I said, my voice rising. "And in this house, we tell the truth." I stood up then. I did not need the cane. I did not need to hold on to the table. I stood tall, the woman who had weathered storms and raised a family and buried a husband. I picked up the thick manila folder sitting next to my plate, the real folder, not the fake one they had brought, and I threw it onto the center of the table. It landed with a heavy final thud right between the roast and the candied yams. "You want Lot 42, I asked, looking from Richard to Tiffany. "You want the $20 million. You want to bulldoze my husband's legacy to build your condos." I leaned in close, letting them see the fire in my eyes. "Too bad. You are about 12 hours too late." "What?" Tiffany shrieked. "I went to the city planning office this morning," I said, savoring every syllable. "I sold Lot 42 to the city, for the grand total of $1. "You are lying," Richard screamed, spit flying from his lips. "You cannot be that stupid." "It is not stupidity, Richard. It is charity. The deed is signed, notarized, and filed. That land is now the Elijah May Memorial Park and Library. It will belong to the children of this city forever. You will never touch a square inch of it. And you," I looked at them with pity, "you get nothing. Not one red cent." The siren started as a low whine in the distance, but within seconds they were screaming right outside my front window. Blue and red lights flashed through the sheer curtains, painting the dining room in chaotic strokes of color. Richard stopped screaming. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure melting in the heat. He looked at the window, then at me, then at the front door where Jamal was already turning the deadbolt. Chief Miller walked in first, his badge gleaming under the foyer light. He did not knock. He did not ask for permission. He walked in like the wrath of God. 2 officers flanked him, their faces grim and professional. They marched straight into the dining room, their heavy boots thudding against the hardwood floors. Richard tried to pull himself together, straightening his jacket with trembling hands. "Now see here, Miller. This is a private family matter. You have no jurisdiction to save it, Richard." Chief Miller barked, cutting him off. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Richard Sterling, you are under arrest for commercial fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. We have the files from the bank vault. We have the video evidence. It is over." When the metal cuffs clicked around Richard's wrists, he slumped forward, the arrogance finally leaving his body. Barbara started shrieking, clutching her diamond necklace as if it could protect her. Then the officers turned to Tiffany. She tried to scramble backward, knocking over her chair, but there was nowhere to go. "No, wait! It was not me!" she cried, pointing a shaking finger at her father. "It was his idea. He made me do it. Marcus, tell them. Tell them I love your mother. But the officers did not care about her lies. They read her rights while she kicked and screamed, dragging her out of my house in her expensive heels. I watched them go, watched the flashing lights reflect in the china cabinet, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I'd been carrying for 3 years. Then there was silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I turned my gaze to the last person left at the table, Marcus. My son slowly slid out of his chair. He did not look at the empty doorway where his wife had just been dragged out. He looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed and wide with terror. He fell to his knees right there on the Persian rug, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. He crawled toward me, grabbing the hem of my dress like a child. "Mom, please," he sobbed, tears streaming down his face. "I did not know. I swear I did not know about the nursing home. I was tricked. She told me it was a retirement community. Please, Mom, do not let them take me too. I am your son." I looked down at him. I remembered the day he was born, how tiny he looked in my arms. I remembered teaching him to tie his shoes. I remembered the pride in Elijah's eyes when Marcus graduated high school. And then I remembered the empty jewelry box. I remembered the fake watch. I remembered him standing by while his wife called me a hag. I pulled my dress out of his grip. "Stand up, Marcus," I said, my voice quiet and cold. He scrambled to his feet, wiping his nose on his sleeve, hope flickering in his eyes. "You forgive me. I knew you would. You are my mother. I am not kicking you out, Marcus," I said. "This house belongs to your father, and as long as I draw breath, I will not put Elijah's son on the street." He let out a breath, a sob of relief. "Thank you, Mom. I promise I will make it up to you." "I am not finished," I interrupted. "I am changing the locks to the main house tonight. You can live in the basement apartment. It has a separate entrance around the back. You will pay rent, market rate. You will buy your own groceries. You will do your own laundry. And you will never step foot in this part of the house again without an invitation." Marcus stared at me, his mouth hanging open. "But Mom, why?" Because I looked him dead in the eye, letting him see the wall I had built around my heart. "I have a tenant now, Marcus. I do not have a son. It has been 6 months since the flashing lights faded from my driveway, and the house is peaceful now. It is the kind of peace that settles in after a long fever finally breaks." Marcus did not last long in the basement apartment. He made it 8 weeks. He paid his rent on time. I will give him that, but he could not handle the silence. He could not handle the sound of the deadbolt clicking shut between the main house and his quarters every night. He packed his bags one Tuesday while I was at church and left a note saying he needed a fresh start. I heard from a friend at the grocery store that he is working sanitation for the city now, sweeping streets, picking up after other people. It is the first honest day of work he has done in his life. I hope it builds character because his inheritance is gone. I spend my evenings on the front porch now in the rocking chair Elijah built. Jamal sits with me when he is not studying. He changed his major to pre-law last week. He says he wants to be like his grandfather. He wants to fight for people who cannot fight for themselves. We watch the construction crews down the street breaking ground on the Elijah May Community Center. The city is building it on Lot 42, just like I asked. Every time I hear those machines working, I know my husband is smiling down on us. I look down at my wrist. The afternoon sun caught the gold band of the watch. It is scratched and the plating is starting to wear off near the clasp, exposing the cheap base metal underneath. It is a counterfeit, a fake. Any pawn shop broker would laugh at it just like Richard did. But to me, it is the most valuable thing in the world. I wear it every single day. Richard and Tiffany saw a cheap watch and treated it like trash. They saw an old woman and treated her like a burden. They looked at the surface of things and missed the depth. That was their downfall. They chased the shine and fell into the pit. I rubbed my thumb over the glass face of the watch, listening to the cheap ticking of the plastic gears inside. Elijah taught me that value does not come from a brand name or a price tag. Value is not found in gold or silver or land deeds. Real value is hidden inside. It is the truth you carry. It is the loyalty you keep. It is the legacy you leave behind when the money is gone. I took a sip of my tea and looked at Jamal, reading his law books in the fading light. He is the real treasure Elijah left me. Not the millions, not the land. him. So that is my story. I saved my legacy, I protected my grandson, and I let the law take care of the wolves. But sometimes late at night, when the house is too quiet, I wonder if I did the right thing by closing the door on my own flesh and blood. So I have to ask you. I turned my own son into a tenant and let him walk out of my life to save himself. Was I too hard on him? Would you have given him another chance after everything he did? Let me know in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe for more stories like mine. Here is the lesson learned from Hattie Mae's story. This story teaches us a profound lesson about the true nature of value and the fatal error of underestimation. Marcus and Tiffany were blinded by the surface-level shine of wealth, luxury vacations, expensive real estate, and brand names. They saw an elderly woman as a burden and a fake watch as trash. In doing so, they missed the immense power hidden beneath both. They failed to realize that wisdom, patience, and strategic silence are far more formidable than loud demands and greed. Hattie Mae proves that age does not diminish strength, it refines it. The counterfeit Rolex perfectly symbolizes this truth. To the ignorant eye, it was worthless, but to those who knew where to look, it held the key to a legacy. Ultimately, we learn that greed is a blinding weakness that leads to ruin, while integrity demonstrated by the loyal grandson Jamal is the only investment that yields true returns. Family is not defined by bloodline, but by who stands beside you to protect the legacy when the wolves are at the door. What do you think? Did Hattie make the right choice by closing the door on her son, or is blood always thicker than water? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.